I'm here at Enthinkment Circle, and we got the quantum dash storytelling. And the video I want to do today is debunking quantum bullshit in the quantum computer revolution. So we're going to look at a whole bunch of quantum entrepreneurs. Hello, Jacob. I'm not saying you're a quantum entrepreneur, but there is a relationship of entrepreneurship and quantum consultants. Oh man, there's hundreds of them. So let's just take a look here. And I will get right into it. Can you hear it? Early days at University of Illinois in the late 70s. I became an assistant professor at UCLA in 1978. These to Loyola Marymount in the 80s to New Mexico State University in 1996 and on to today. I moved from the IBM key punch cards to IBM key punch cards to IBM quantum computing myths that are here today in 2024. So I want to explode these myths and point out the quantum bullshit that's rampant when it comes to the quantum computers. Here's my story. I went to the University of Illinois as an MBA student on a fellowship in 1975, and I had never touched a computer before. Never barely even seen one except through a lab window. But I decided to type out my dissertation. And the University of Illinois Technological Services, right, had the cyber units from 1970, the Cyber 173, the 174, and this is in Champaign-Urbana. These machines were on a mainframe and connected units, and it was a really nice way to get out of punch carding and job control language. More about that in a minute. So here's some pictures to see what a lab looked like for students. And when I would go in and type out my dissertation, I was the first student at University of Illinois Champaign-Urbana in 1978 to print out a dissertation on a Diablo printer. Before that, you had to hire a typist to type it out on special paper. They delayed my actual graduation date a year until 1979, trying to figure out what to do with the first ever Diablo printed computer generated dissertation. And finally, they said something stupid like, go down to the copy store and take your printout from the Diablo, then copy it onto paper sheets, and then bring it back, and we will certify it. So, initially at UCLA it was punch cards, and I went to working in the cyber stations to my first job as an assistant professor at the Anderson School of Management at UCLA, and I was horrified. They didn't have the Cyber 174, 175 stations. Instead, I had to type out job control language on punch cards and sit down to a punch card machine. Oh my God, it was primitive. I had these decks of cards and boxes, and the first few cards was a job control language, and you'd hand it to somebody and they would run it through the system. Then you'd wait probably overnight to get the job out. And if you made one little error in a punch card, you had to do it all over again. So long about 1981 at UCLA, I purchased one of the first Adam Osborne computers. It was a portable computer. It was like a sewing kit machine in a case, and you walked along with it, and it weighed, 40 pounds. And you use these floppy disks. I mean, they were really floppy, bendable. And you had 5K in one for your programs and 5K in the other. Can you imagine trying to work with 5K? It was ridiculous. But storage devices, they continued to grow. And we went from optical devices and Blu-ray to magnetic hard disk and floppy disks. That's where I come in the story. And then later in life, I had flash memory with USB and memory cards and SD cards, a lot of SD cards, oh my gosh. So here you can see a diagram showing kind of the evolution from the floppy disk to that was big, an 8-inch. That's what I used on the Osborne. And then it went to a 5 1/4 and then a 3 1/2 plastic ones. I got stacks of them in the garage. And then you had the CDs and the DVDs and the USBs and the SDs, and then the cloud computing. Oh, cloud, they charge way too much money for that. Get yourself a USB stick. Anyway, about 1982, I bought one of the first Model 5150 K-Pros and a K-Pro 2 after that. And it was great. It was one of the first microcomputers after the Osborne went bankrupt and went out of business. There's a team of engineers for the K-Pro, right? They had been actually working as designers at IBM. William Lowe and Philip Don Estridge in Boca Raton, Florida. Well, at UCLA, eventually, we got those desktops with the big screens, and they were initially green screens, and they were primitive. And so eventually, Anderson School of Management invested in something beyond the punch card system that I encountered in 1978, 79, 80. And we were so desperate at UCLA, some of my buddies in the Anderson School of Management started soldering their own personal computers and get these green boards and slot it down and solder connections and order the parts. And this was a time before the real internet. You could dial up to somebody's house who had a computer and see things and dial down, and that's all right. But eventually we got into the 1990s and we had these floppy disk machines that were bigger, the big monitors, and 50 pounds of junk on your desktop. And eventually, I got one of the early PowerBook systems here at Mexico State University. I had to argue with the dean. The dean says, I only want desktops. I want to make sure faculty are in their offices. It was total bullshit. So before the MacBook, computers looked like this, and then we had the desktops, and finally we got these beautiful color things. I was the first in my college to get a MacBook, and I said, look, I want a MacBook. I don't want a desktop. I move around. I do research. I'm a researcher. I don't sit at the desk. They had a rule at one time, 20 years earlier, that you couldn't leave the campus to get a haircut. You had to stay at your desk. It was ridiculous. So there was this movement of computing, and we're getting into the quantum computer, and you can see all kinds of YouTubes by these woo-woo wannabe scientists or scientists that have given up science for woo-woo, and they enter the quantum bullshit. And you can trace the history from 1999 of the formation of the quantum computer and IBM Q. It happens in 2023, 2020, and different versions of it. And they got a computing roadmap to move from the Falcon in 2019 to the Hummingbird quantum computer in 2020, to the Eagle in 2021, to the Osprey in 2022. I guess they like birds or something. And then the Condor 2023. And it looks like this, and everybody thinks that the whole thing, not everybody, but those that don't know about it, think that quantum computers is huge things from ceiling to floor with all this stuff around it. But you see this lady, she's touching down there toward the bottom. That little piece is the quantum computer. The rest of it above is this cooling thing to get it down to 0 degree temperature. And here you can see a bigger map of the 10-year plan to get this quantum computer to happening. And in 2033, we're promised this modular design supercomputer of a bunch of four smaller quantum computers together. But let's talk about the difference between myth and reality. Really like this book, Quantum Bullshit, How to Ruin Your Life with Advice from Quantum Physics, because I did a lot of writing about consulting and quantum storytelling and quantum woo-woo. And there's a lot of quantum woo-woo, quantum bullshit in the consulting world. And all these people are doing startup firms, but then you have the bigger firms, and I'll show you an example here, some of the bigger firms. that are big consulting, billion-dollar consulting companies. And like KPMG is one of the ones that's excelling in trying to get people into small business startup consulting and not mainframe, but manufacturing the hardware and doing the software for the quantum computer. But, one of the big advocates of this notion of quantum supremacy, of how quantum computers will change everything in our life, is Misashio Kaku. And he's charismatic and dynamic, and you really want to believe his quantum storytelling about quantum computers. But it's not entirely accurate. Here's some key myths, and I'll put some links to if you want to find out more about these myths. Number one, quantum computers can solve all classical computer problems, that I was showing you on my little computers and the mainframes. Well, in fact, quantum computers speed up solving only certain very detailed problems. Myth number two, quantum supremacy spells the beginning of the end of classical computing. But in point of fact, classical computers, like the ones I've showed you in my history, won't be completely swept aside by these quantum computers. Myth number three, quantum scale cryptography provides complete data security, and you can use these quantum computers to defrag and get into anybody's security information on any computer in the world. But in fact, it's the cryptography of quantum computers isn't all that safe. It's not able to do any of these things. And quantum computers require super low temperatures to operate the disturbance of the environment's temperatures and keep the noise and interference down. So you have to have near absolute zero temperatures. And that's pretty darn expensive to have. And you're not going to have this on your desktop any decade soon. So some more myths. Quantum computing will mean the end of normal computing. We've already said that that's not going to happen. We're going to be stuck with our desktops and our laptops and our MacBooks and the rest of the Dells and HPs, et cetera, for quite a while. Quantum computing can run program codes similar to classical computing. Well, no, they need a whole new software algorithm, and it's not going to break down cybersecurity and cryptography anytime soon. Quantum computing will destroy the cybersecurity world, it is said, but it's not there yet, not likely to be here. It's quantum bullshit. More quantum bullshit, quantum computers might attain consciousness. Well, this is just quantum woo-woo, and go read some science fiction books if this is what you think quantum computing is. Quantum computing will commercially be available in 15 years. Well, I don't think so. I'm going to predict, no, it's not. Stay with your laptops. Quantum computers will be better at modeling the real world scenario and do finance forecasting so you can get rich in the stock market and agricultural models and weather and everything else. Well, it's not happening. So read the book by Chris Ferry, who's an actual quantum physicist. And this is all quantum bullshit, he says, and it's really, really interesting, the reviews that he's been getting. Let me tell you about some of the chapters in the book. He uses terms like quantum fucking energy, quantum matter waves, fucking matter waves. Here, Ferry is jokingly revealing and in satire to debunk these notions of the quantum computer and goes after the quantum woo-woo. We have no fucking clue what is going on, he says, in this research that's happening now. Even the uncertainty principle, people don't understand it and they misapply it in quantum consulting. I will add quantum consulting to the mix. And in quantum storytelling that's being done. See my video on the 4 types of quantum storytelling. The fucking zombie cat, Schrodinger's cats, explores misuses of Schrodinger cats in chapter 4. And according to Ferry, usually come down to the imprecision of our language and these joking examples, thought experiments. He even quotes to show that in the chapter, we begin to delve into the worldview titled, if you hate something like torturing the cat, set it free, open the box, And as some comedian was saying the other day, how long can a cat live in a Schrodinger box? Do you feed it? Are you leaving it there forever? I mean, time matters. Finally, we get to the most important of the things for quantum computers in chapter 6, this many worlds problem. You hear these people talk about the many worlds hypothesis, that these quantum computers will be able to calculate all possible millions of variations in seconds, and it would take a classical computer 100 years or 1,000 years. His argument against this is it's convoluted interpretations. He says, shut up and calculate, because calculation works, bitches. Now, I'm quoting some of his terms, and I'll probably have to put 50 cents in the jar for, well, maybe like $10 for the amount of cursing here. But Ferry rejects all under the many world interpretations. So, we can understand why the authors are beginning to reject this notion of quantum computing. And yeah, maybe someday it will happen. I mean, yeah, we would like new generations of computers to do something cool. But quantum consulting right now, KMP is just touting the IBM line on quantum computers and a bunch of other companies, the big billion-dollar ones and the startup ones and the smaller $100,000 quantum computing. You can see hundreds of them on the internet. Everybody is using the word quantum, but it's all quantum bullshit. All right. And this is David Boji, and I'm doing an episode from Quantum-Storytelling. All right. And have a wonderful day, and keep getting innovations on computers. Don't buy in. Whoa. Okay. So you didn't interrupt, so I just let it run through. So I think we might have lost Ronnie. Are you here? So, yeah, I'm improving my skills as a videographer, but, I was tapping on the machine while it's recording, and that's probably not a good idea. But I did learn how to use the green screen and how to do the iMovie editing. So that's been a project of 3 years. Anyway. So what do you think? Am I off the mark? Is it too severe? Is it too not scientific enough? I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, it just gives it character. I mean, I actually like your, vehemence in this, and I liked it. I mean, I think I would like to see a little more about. I mean, I'm curious about, the consulting firms. Is it just language that they're using, or I mean, how do they back that up? Because I mean, they're selling a service, right?
It's a good question. Yeah, they're all over the map. I haven't found any that are particularly genuine yet.
Okay.
KPMG comes closest to mirroring IBM Quantum. IBM's a manufacturer, developer, et cetera. KPMG then goes around to small businesses, medium corporations, and advises them on the forensics of the common quantum computer industrial era, and how they should make their purchases and investments and where it should be in the supply chain and blah, 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 blah. Now, the other ones, it goes to the other extreme. They just put quantum ahead of the word consulting, and they do woo-woo, they do, dream making, they do myth making, they do, they use quantum language from the double slit experiment to entanglement to, you name it. And then they give it a mythical interpretation in modern day. And then, so everything in between. And, consultants are charlatans anyway, so what do you expect,
So, David, I mean, I like that explanation, because I mean, when you said about when you talked about the quantum computing, because for data sets, right? I mean, what you just mentioned, right? I could see where that's relevant, or where it's actually applicable. But then you say, if I understood you correctly, a lot of companies just use the language but don't actually do anything. They don't provide, an analysis that could even be remotely useful, other than it sounding good to something, or sounding good in a brochure or something like that.
It's in the experimental stage. They're doing experiments to do calculations of very, very narrow things, like, I don't know, computing pi to the highest decimal point or something weird. But it is nothing that you or I could use in everyday life. So,
I see what you, okay.
May not ever be. you know?
Yeah, I think
Thank you, Ronnie. Will do.
And I think too, I mean, I really believe that if one goes into it, right, I mean, like somebody should have like an understanding, really of the physics of it. I mean, I can see where it can be valuable, but not without understanding it. Just using the words just doesn't mean, well, that's just right. I mean, if you don't really make good connections and don't understand the foundation of all of it, but
it's a material discourse. It's a quantum discourse. It's a quantum semiotics. It's a quantum discourse semiotics, however you want to phrase it. And it can be totally exaggerating. It can be totally underwhelming. It can be totally misguided, or it can be something that's sort of meticulously developed. It's not meticulously developed. I think IBM Quantum doing fabulous millions and millions of dollars of research, some funded by the government. And then, but they haven't produced much that's got what they call quantum utility, usefulness to the consumer, the corporation, the government. Not yet. Could be someday, but these are expensive machines, big cooling tubes on them. I mean, until they have some major breakthroughs.
When I was at Los Alamos, we used, they had a quote unquote quantum computer that we put huge corpora into, right? And I had to have a mathematician because the semiotics that I was doing at the time, I didn't know the mathematics of the vector space, et cetera, and how to code the corpora that was going in. And that's when we began to realize, when I began talking about cryptotypes, because we understood that there was a musical underpinning of language, right? For a question, for an inquiry, for a sale, right? But not being able to get to that, we could pour millions of pages in, and I could do, the search for the semiotics that I wanted to get at the very end. The mathematician could go through all of that. And then at the very end, I'm left with bullshit, And that was my experience with quantum computing at Los Alamos. So anyway, throw that in there because what's interesting to me, I'm going to head back into the myth making. I think it was Stephanie at the conference. I believe her name was Stephanie, asked me how do we begin to build myth again, right? Because it's a very important way of teaching, right? And that's what these woo-woo people, what the quantum bullshit people have noticed. They know this stuff, right? They're the snake oil salesmen. So they know about how to build a legendary hero, right? They know how to build, or talk about the legendary feats, right? Even if the hero is flawed, like Achilles was with his heel, right? You're not going to, they know how to build this stuff. They're the salespeople, right? And they're catching the wave, the discursive wave of deception that began, in my opinion, with Plato and Aristotle, right? This is how far this wave has crashed, and now it's crashing into us with all kinds of consequences that we're having to deal with. And am I making some sense here? Oh, David, you're
absolutely, absolutely. I invite you to go to Wikipedia, not the greatest authoritative source in the world, but at least they have there's a best-selling book by, let me get the name of it right so I won't screw it up, Masahiro Kaku. His book on
Kaku would be one of the heroes, maybe.
Supremacy. Now, he's a quantum theorist, but he's gone on to the talk circuits and he's saying we're at the fourth industrial revolution brought about by quantum computing. And it's going to be as revolutionary as the invention of the transistor, blah, blah, blah. And it's going to combine with AI and it's going to do all these things. Well, people are saying he doesn't provide any authoritative research. He doesn't provide any sources in his book. He doesn't explain where he's getting this interpretation of quantum many world hypothesis, for example, how quantum computing does that. So they're saying, that's why the fellow wrote the book on quantum bullshit, who's a quantum theorist, but writes child books and decided I will write a book totally accessible to expose this kind of hypocrisy. Yeah.
Well, and I would like to see it also done with. I've been reading Korean authors recently, and that are dealing with AI, right? And one of the fellows I've actually connected with online, right? And he says that right now there's this real push in AI to get rid of bias, and he says, he's from Korea. He says, no, that's the last thing we want to do. We want all kinds of bias in the AI as a safeguard, right? So that you have multiple points of view. Am I making some sense here? So that you're not reliant upon one company or one set of computer aficionados that are writing this stuff, this code, right? And their points of view, because then we really are stuck in this patriarchy that is not going to allow us to breathe. It is going to consume us.
Oh, yeah.
Does that make some sense?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I really like his point of view. And I had no idea that they're trying to get rid of bias in AI, which they cannot do. It's a myth. That's the big myth.
Well, the author of the book the Chris that I was talking about, he said you can use Chat GT AI and get a better understanding of quantum mechanics and quantum computers than you can by Professor Kaku's book on quantum supremacy. So that's how they're really going. That book is really tanking, but it was on the bestseller list. So
I think he's been on TV all the time.
Oh yeah, but there's like a half a dozen theories of the fourth industrial revolution, and this one is competing with those others. So I guess that's kind of points of view perspectives. But anyway, I'm excited. I'm opening up quantum storytelling to researchable topics. You know what I mean? Like look at the quantum storytelling, the movies, look at the sciences, look at the consulting firms, look at government agencies. Yeah, go ahead, Sabine.
Yeah, I really love the movies one too, because that also is myth making. I mean, that is in a really big way, myth making. Popular culture, right, has always been sort of there. So I
think we like. I mean, as humans, right? I mean, let's be honest, we like myths, don't we? I mean, it was
the first form of teaching.
Right. I mean, we like myths, and I think the creation of myths, right? I mean, wasn't it also, like to explain things, to make things intelligible?
No, exactly. I mean, Sabine, that was the codification, if you will, of theoria or teoria. Okay, and teoria was the original traveler that would go to foreign lands, bring back things that they were unaccustomed to in their own cultures. And then, of course, we got into the rhapsodic arena, right? And that's more presentational, right? And so that's when you really begin to see the myth becomes the school. For example, Homer. Okay, Homer with the Iliad, right, and the Odyssey. Okay, so that's okay, and there's hundreds of figures of speech, like over 240, sometimes 40 variations under each one. But that was acrostic. The poetry itself in Homer was acrostic, and what that meant is at the beginning of every quote unquote, I mean, I'm going to say paragraph, even though it wasn't paragraph, was a letter. And so this was also a teaching system for the Greek alphabet, right? Cool. And and so that's what a lot of the acrostic is. So yes, these are all teaching methodologies, if you will. And we're not about to get out of them now. Nietzsche had quite a different take on this. He said, okay, well, once you have removed the chorus from the stage, right, then you've birthed tragedy. I call crap on Nietzsche. Okay, first of all, Nietzsche. So basically, he's saying that once we have this interaction with those that are on stage where we're actually participants in the dramas, right, then we birth tragedy. Okay, so you can understand. I mean, if you read through the book, The Birth of Tragedy, and if you read his histories and whatnot, then you can understand where he's coming from. Having said that, no, this is not. That is a very patriarchal, fascist way of thinking to control that chorus, which again is related to Korah, that engine. Okay. So when we were gifted the chorus, when it came off stage, right, in the ancient Greek plays, when it came off stage and became the audience, the participatory audience, right, we were gifted back again a sense of Korah at every cell in our being.
So I mean, but I think, there are deliberate. I mean, there are myths, right, that are
absolutely
deliberately created to make us think a certain way, to make us
of
believe.
course. I mean, look at white supremacy myths are rampant right now, right? I mean, that's like the and the tactics they use are scarcity, rarity, right? Mm-hmm. And it goes on through fear and then into violence, right? It taps into the violent nature, right? Yeah, no, I mean, we are constantly myth building. And I love the work that David's doing right now because calling bullshit on people who are just riding the wave as opposed to understanding where we are in this discursive field, right? That's crashing in on us, and how we go about either swerving it around it, as Donna Haraway would say, or do what, I think that what your video showed was Myra J. Hurd with the straw, right? I mean, come on. You're gifting me a straw that now has to go through these processes, and the recycling itself takes more energy than freaking putting this in the landfill. This is not an ecological way of going. This is not a great gift. I have something to show you guys, if you guys don't mind. Okay.
Oh, that's what we do here. How you doing, Paul? You hanging in there?
Hello, Paul.
I was
Good
late,
as always.
and I missed. I guess it's in a can. The early part of David's presentation, which I really liked, because when you were talking about the 8-inch floppies, I identified with maybe not the topic about quantum bullshit, but it was fun for me to review my ever-fading memory of what it was like in 1972. And for me, it was Apple. It was Apple IIe. It was Macintosh. It was all of it. The early days of computing. And how it all evolved, and it all evolved at 90 miles an hour under my nose and with me in it. And I couldn't quite feel it. It was like to cope with it in my work. Computers were a precious resource to me as a teacher, and I didn't get tormented the way you described. It began in my high school teaching. I said, I'm a language teacher. I hope I get a computer. We're going to get a computer. And it's really going to be great for language teaching. And no, it's going to the business teacher is going to get the 2 Apple computers. I never touched the computer in my time in high school. Yeah, whatever. And so the dealing with the technology as it unfolded was like the evolution of everything. Marshall McLuhan everything is in the rearview mirror. Here we back into the future. Our eyes are looking at the electric light bulb, etc. I'm sorry, I'm being chaotic here, but it was fun seeing all of that, and I hope I get to look at the video later. I'm trying to keep up with David's video production, and
oh man, that's
I've been on a roll.
Okay, so I grew up on a sheep ranch, as a lot of you guys know. And this is a stainless steel bowl, right, that was on the sheep ranch. And we would take these also went up to the sheep camp near Medicine Wheel, okay? And I got to thinking about Myra J. Hurd's straw, and how weird that all is, And then I was in the kitchen, I was doing dishes, and I thought, oh my gosh, my grandmother used these bowls from the 1940s probably on, and then I inherited them, right? Not something that I'm going to be giving away. They were pretty cool at the sheep camp because you could take small portions of something and set it on the fire, right? And it wouldn't harm the bowl at all. You could always clean it, right? I mean, it's interesting to me that we've gotten into the purchase and recycle mode. We never get into the reuse mode.
Well, I think in Europe they started, I mean, some of it became cumbersome, because there were dishes that were in restaurants that were supposed to be reused, I mean, so you paid an amount, to take it out, and you would get that money back, when you bring the dish back. But, in reality, that's not particularly practical, I mean, a lot of people just didn't do that. That's like, well, for 50 cents or whatever, I am not going to walk down there and return that dish, So, I mean, I think practicality matters with a lot of this stuff.
To go into that ethico-ontological, right? The ethico-onto-epistemology, so that we understand how we can design or redesign a social structure or our societies in ways that are materially useful. And this is where the feminist materialists really are making some headway, right? With everything. I mean, I'm just absolutely happy that Barad, Myra J. Hurd, and Donna Haraway are core theorists for you now, David, because they were my core theorists 10 years ago, and I'm just like, I'm thrilled. But it's how do we make this stuff useful, and so that it's good? It's a gifting economy for the whole planet. Am I making some? I mean, this comes down to designing the materials, right? And as you say, Sabine, practical materials, right, that are wanted. And how do we get people to want that kind of stuff? Do we even know what that is? I mean, for me, it's the little bowl. You know what I'm saying? That has, I can heat this thing up. I can throw it in the oven. I can eat cereal out of it. I can freeze, right, stuff in this bowl. It has multiple ways of
sure,
going.
I think, the practicality is clearly, it's durable, it's practical, it's not something that you just, use once and throw in the trash. So, I mean, it's true, but, I think our, consumption patterns, right? I mean, they have sped up. I mean, think about cell phones, right? I mean, it's like, an iPhone 5 and 6 and 7 and 110 or whatever, right? I mean, and look, my mother had a refrigerator, that stood there for, 25 years, and it worked just fine. Right. Ours died after 8 years, So,
we are in rhythms that are unsustainable. I got to thinking when you were talking, Sabine, about fast food and the reasons why people even partake of this crap, right? It's because of scheduling. It's because, and I remember these days as a single mother, right, working and trying to get my master's, trying to get my PhD, right? And the craziness around raising a couple kids, right? But I always committed, like David did, to eating healthy, right? So my kids knew how to do that, right? They knew what to select, right? Did it take more effort? Yes. Did it take more time? Yes. Did it take something out of me? Yes, perhaps, but it also gave me something. We have to get into a mindset that really adamantly says we want a gifting economy. Mm-hmm. We want something that's going to give back to our environment.
But the issue is, and we live in a consume, economy. And I remember as a young boy, my parents got married in 1930, the beginning, whatever, of the Depression. I was born in 1943, okay? Those 13 years between, shall we say, my parents getting married and my arrival on the planet were 13 years of great difficulty for everybody in the country because of the Depression, okay? And when I grew up, what my parents it was part of our household, was thrift, frugality, save things. What the most valuable thing is something that you get and it's reusable and you don't have to go buy another one. And I was born at what I will label the beginning of, yes, a stainless steel bowl. Guess what? In our kitchen, we have a set of 4 nested stainless steel bowls like you have that we bought, that my wife bought 30 years ago, 40 years ago. They're indestructible. They're easy to clean, but the victory of consume is all of the entities who are making money by selling us something that you need to go get more of. And we keep manufacturing and we keep selling it to ask this hell-bent on consumption and growth economy to stop doing what it's doing and revert. I'm using these words because I don't know how else to talk about it. And what we need to do is to revert to that economy where my mother made everything in the kitchen. My mother did go to the store and she bought stuff. All right. But my recollection, and again, I'm being an 80-year-old man and recounting tales of my childhood. My first recollection of a grocery store was a trip away from our house to a place called the A&P Food Store, the Great Atlantic and Pacific Tea Company. That was an early, version of the food chains that now own the universe. And going into that store, it was still like a farmer's market because they had bins filled with carrots and potatoes and apples and oranges and lettuce and whatnot. And going to shop at that place meant picking through. There was no, nice, plastic packages, all of the plastic and all of the whole packaging business. What I remember on the kitchen table as a kid was cardboard boxes of cereal, cornflakes, whatever they were. And that was my introduction to the consumable world, where my parents would go off and buy this dry cereal that you added milk to and put it in a bowl. But my parents were still making cream of wheat and oatmeal. That meant you put the grain into a pot and you cooked it, and then you added milk. And there was more time. There was more energy devoted. But there are so many people who are foodies. They're into cooking, and the how extreme can we get in making wonderful food? And what we are drowning in is all of the stuff that keeps being produced and keeps being advertised. And I mean, this mindset kind of began in me when I came back from the Army and I wound up without a job and poor. And I was around people who were trying to survive, who were not war veterans or anything. They were just young people trying to make their way. And everybody all of a sudden got into consumables, stalking the wild asparagus. That was a book from I don't know what year it was. That was about indigenous ways of eating. Oh, wouldn't it be fun if we could all go out into the countryside and pick food, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm sorry, I don't want to get off. When David recounts the history of his writing a paper, and I remember when I was writing a paper back in 1968 on a touch, I didn't even have an electric typewriter. I had a Greek typewriter and I had a conventional typewriter. I had to roll paper in and out. And if I made a mistake, I had to throw 4 pieces of paper away, carbon, yada, yada. It was a nightmare for me to produce a 80-page dissertation that had some writing in it every now and then.
Yeah, I remember.
And when the Selectric...
So what is management doing about focusing in a laser-focused way, right, to make the planet more habitable? I mean, we've already seen all the bullshit with the green, you know what I'm saying? Where they pretend like so they have the little agency within the corporation that's, the green, right? This is all the stuff they're donating, or this is the ways that they're making life better, right? And most of that has been bullshit that they've been able to write off. I mean,
the word that a friend of mine made was greenwashing.
Yeah, greenwashing. That's right.
That's been in the air for 20 years, 25 years. I said, we get the corporate saying, oh, look at us. Currently, it's the plastics. We get all of these great ads. We are the plastic manufacturers of America. Look at how cool we are because we are now paying attention. And it's just like, it's bullshit.
Well, I got an idea. I did it in a video this week. I did so many videos. I've just had creative explosions going on. But one of them I did was on contact minerals using analysis from
Frickin' loved that one.
Quantum material kind of methodology. Trace the materials in the cell phone, trace the materials in the laptop. And you have all of these annual reports done by Apple Computer, Dell Computer, blah, 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 claiming that they're not using contact minerals from the Africa area where you have the most women rapes and abuse. You have the most child labor in Africa right there. And they're claiming that the way that they're hiring a certifier and an auditor, they'll certify that those rocks that they're shipped to China and they're coming to a plant that are making the Apple iPhone, et cetera, those chips and everything in the iPhone and the circuits, the tungsten, the tin, the thallium, the cobalt for the lithium battery, that's all not done with child labor. Well, it's total bullshit because all the people on the ground, the indigenous auditors are saying, there's one, there's another one. And these are like 500 or more different mines that families are doing with child labor. And then there's gangs, militia gangs that are in uniform with machine guns and grenades. And you probably have 30 to 50 of those gangs. They're like little mafias that are controlling all the transactions. Sure. So the thing is bedlam. The thing is absolutely corrupt. So no corporation can legitimately claim that the sourcing that they're using for their laptops and cell phones or anything else, their GPS systems and cars, is anything but corrupt. But they're trying to, and see, Ronnie and I and Jacob, we have the analytic training in management studies and organization studies to go through an annual report and say, well, how are they calculating the math on this to show that between 2020 and 2023, there's been a 20% less use of child labor and that we're getting actual certified sources in tagged bags. Well, they farm it out to some industry group that's a group of corporations, and they hire this auditing firm or this auditor or some corrupt consultant pretending to be an auditor, whatever it is. And then that person does little surveys and little interviews with the heads of these supply chain units and says, well, do you think you have less child labor than you did in 2020? Oh, yes, sir, we do. Oh, yes, sir, absolutely. Well, on a scale to 1 to 10, do you think it's 10% more, 20%, 30% less? What is your thing? And then they give you an average score in that stupid report. Mm-hmm. So that score means absolutely nothing. It's not real data. It's an indice concocted out of bullshit.
It's disinformation.
It's disinformation, but your average consumer isn't trained in the quantitative skills to be able to decipher. They hear it and they say, well, that sounds good. It's 20% less child labor than they were. They're going in the right direction. Hooray. But it's just bullshit. It's a con artist.
It's the same thing with organic foods. And I know this is not going to probably sit well with you, but I have a friend from Romania who said that she worked in that industry and she came here to Laramie and she was telling me that they actually have a black market of organic stickers, right? With the barcodes on them, right? That
same people, in Africa.
If they were to test the fruits and vegetables, they would find that these are not organic fruits and vegetables. But we don't have that sort of consumer agency that is willing to go out into the field and go buy a few vegetables from Safeway and test them.
But there's a whole industry, involved because of the big money that is utterly corrupted our politics. No matter where you go, no matter what you do, we have consumers.
This is 3 standard deviations to the right bad end. The Republican right. So
but try to get this news.
They are.
How do you get this news?
Yeah, but see, there's a legitimate way to do this, which we've studied in the Coalition of Mockley Workers with the tomato pickers. where you have indigenous participation in the auditors, you have hotlines, you have all kinds of on the ground auditors from Africa that are from the community, and they're talking to these people and they're identifying problems, and then they're fixing problems politically, economically, socially. That is possible.
If I drive down the road to Wendy's, Wendy's is a presence in my life. The coalition of workers I would not know existed. Did I not participate in this group?
Yeah,
that's basically, David, I think one of the approaches is, you guys are tracing the credibility, and that's a whole lot of work, right? That's a whole lot of material work to trace the credibility, and then you have to educate the public, and that's a whole other ball of wax. You know how that is in academia.
I believe that Ronnie's daughter Ever could do this right now and handle the math in better ways than these annual report doofuses are doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
She could just say, she could read it and go, well, that just seems weird. Are they measuring the metal? Are they measuring the bag tag? Well, how are they authenticating this? And they're not. Well, we have a third party doing it. Yeah, Joe says that these tags are good, so we believe Joe.
I think, Jerry, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's a whole lot of work, right? And then people are already in certain habits, right? I mean, they're in the habits of stopping at Wendy's on their way home from work. How do you you have to overcome that too, the whole habit thing.
Well, if I'm a well-informed consumer and pays attention to the content, I mean, if I have here's an example. Here's the Chobani. It has a UPC on it, and it has somewhere on it. It has nutrition facts, and it has data about what's in it. But if I want to know about Chobani, ethical, moral, sustainable, it's not on this package. I go to the store and I want to buy some yogurt, so I buy some yogurt. And
well, that's just it.
If you want to do business with people who are reputable, what you have got to do, and I remember this from my vegetarian friends back in 1974 and 75, you have to walk away from a lot of the modern world and do a whole lot of work that you don't do now. You have to get your hands dirty. You've got to grow a garden.
Well, me at 5 a.m. this morning, I'm out there picking cherries because a lot of them had gone bad, and a lot of them I put into the bird bin, right, where I'm feeding birds the dried off cherries, right? I mean, this is the but these are all choices, but I'm not sure people really understand that they have those kinds of choices anymore because we're on this hamster wheel. And that's where you guys, if you at least trace the credibility of these and you and I used to do this, David. I mean, remember the days of looking at all of the annual reports. This is when Anna Linda Musacchio was involved with Wells Fargo. Remember that year? Okay, right? Okay, so when you trace the credibility and you find there is none, right? Who's going to issue that report? I mean, who in management studies or in true storytelling or in quantum storytelling is going to be opening up that picture for people? We need to build, in my opinion, those legendary heroes like you. You're a legendary hero to me.